know you had the conviction, but are we ahead of where you thought we would be? Are we on track?
We're literally just getting started. We're like 1/10 of the way to the $10 trillion market cap.
The corporate treasury putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet started.
I know you had the conviction, but are we ahead of where you thought we would be? Are we on track?
You know, it was 2012. And so we've been sort of in it for, going on almost a decade. And
wow.
I guess it's like one of those things where in some way it's like, we believed in this was our vision sort of the future. I think in some ways we're ahead of where we thought we'd be, and some ways behind. I think like we were thinking, in 2014, 15 and 16, there was a lot of chatter that like Wall Street's coming into Bitcoin, and it really did not happen. And it's totally fine because it's been very much an individual revolution. And Bitcoin, at least in our view, is all about empowering the individual. It's really why we built Gemini to get people into the Bitcoin world and this alternative system that we believe creates greater choice, independence, and opportunity. I think once you don't have alternatives or you're locked into a system or jailed into it, that's really not great for the individual and empowerment. And so, look, I think in some ways it's amazing to see sort of what's happened, and it's at times surreal. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, wow, this has actually happened. You're in a big way. The other part of me says like we're so early. I mean, I want to use a baseball metaphor, but I know I need to use like a cricket, like the first wicket or whatever.
The first innings.
The first inning. I mean, we're just, it's really amazing to see Tesla take a $1.5 billion position, but we also have to remind ourselves this is an incredibly founder-driven, founder-led, mission-oriented company, and there's still many companies on the S&P 500 that aren't there, that will be there, I think, tomorrow, or might not have a founder who is as sort of direct and able to do something like that. So there's a lot more dominoes that will and quite frankly, need to fall in this regard. We're literally just getting started. We're like 1/10 of the way to the $10 trillion market
this year, but the corporate treasury putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet started, right? At some point, those dominoes will continue to fall. And like Cameron said, Fortune 500 companies, all of them will have something, right? And then at some point, a central bank will fall. Central banks, their muscle memory has been to stack gold. Even when they say everything's happening, everything's fine, this is normal, all this money printing, no big deal, nothing to see here. Don't listen to what they say, look at what they do. And their balance sheets, they've been stacking gold. Okay, so that behavior doesn't indicate that everything's okay to me, right? Because they're getting this hard money. And then they'll discover that the hardest money in the galaxy is Bitcoin. So at some point, there will be a central bank that starts putting Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So when you think of, and then it's just bananas, right? And when you think of how early we are in the corporate treasuries doing this, and then the fact that central banks will do this because this behavior, they do it with gold. And if you do it with gold, you are going to do it. It's not an if, it's a when with Bitcoin. And that's just like the Bitcoin, gold 2.0 story. So I see a path to 10 trillion very easily. But as we know, Bitcoin's a lot more than just a metal. An open source project, gold built for the internet, it can do so much more. So, we published that thought piece of the case for 500,000 Bitcoin, but it's conservative. It could be a lot more.
But it's going to be sort of one of those mad dashes, as Tyler mentioned. I mean, I every once in a while I remind people on Twitter that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and there's 46 million millionaires on the planet right now. There's not a full Bitcoin to go around. You don't want to be the millionaire who's not in that 21 million bucket. Then you're no longer going to be a millionaire. And it's like being at a party, the music stops. You got to find that seat. And buying Bitcoin is like buying a pro rata seat on this network of money, the store of value network. And really, time is of the essence.
Yeah. One other thing is you're starting to see a lot of these big banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Boney get into Bitcoin. That's all driven by their customers. Their private wealth customers are seeing what's happening with the price of Bitcoin. They're like, how do I get exposure? They're like, we don't know. We don't know how to do it.
All the announcements coming out are that these banks are allowing their wealthy clients to buy Bitcoin. It's not, that's the announcement.
Because they're freaking out because the wealthy clients are seeing the price of Bitcoin, the best performing asset of the last decade. It's going to be the best this decade, and they can't touch it. right? So how are these private wealth managers doing their job if they literally can't get their clients Bitcoin? So that's driving it. That's what drives all these banks, is ultimately it's the business case and the demand from their customers. And so, yeah, as the price keeps going up, like everybody's like, what are we doing here? The risk is sitting on the sidelines. The risk is doing nothing. I think that's the ultimate, like that's the, people are like, oh, how do you get comfortable with Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin? Like, how do you get comfortable not holding Bitcoin? Like, that's so much more risky. I would never take that bet over the last decade or the next decade or the one thereafter. So like, and that the way I think about it, the way you think about it, Peter, the way Cameron thinks about it, that's rapidly becoming the way everyone thinks about it. They're like, wait, I don't have chips on the table. That's kind of reckless and insane.
Bitcoin's a simple idea when you boil it down. It's go long the future of store of value money, the future, reserve currency. Yes, you're gonna literally hodl it for years. Don't look at it, and you're gonna ask someone to collect a fee on that advice. It's kind of a hard sell, and so I think a lot of the resistance sometimes is this baked in belief of diversification and portfolio construction, and people making those straightforward, simple bets on the future sometimes become elusive in those environments. I think that's part of it. And I think there may be a belief that, a little bit of a resistance, right? And people who have been in capital markets for 20 years and they sort of climbed the mountain, they learned, became experts at what they do. And then all of a sudden there's this new thing over here and it requires you to walk down the mountain and learn again. And stomaching that and becoming like a beginner, a total noob where you can't just reach back on years of experience. It's very humbling. I mean, I get humbled by Bitcoin on a daily basis, right? You have to be humbled, be prepared to be humbled over and over again. Your patience will be tested. And I think for a lot of people, that's just not an attractive path.
I think it's always, for a lot of people, the biggest fear. Biggest fear is like the regulators are going to come in, they're going to ban this, or they're going to just make it so difficult to use pro Bitcoin. You guys have been very good at working closely with regulators rather than fighting them, just trying to kind of build in that relationship. Where do you think we are, put people's mind at ease with regards to the regulators?
So I think if we were back in 2013, this would be kind of an open question. There was some hearings and we really didn't know. I think that the US will never outlaw Bitcoin. There's too much precedent that's been set in the courts. The coin flip order, which was a CFTC enforcement action, which was upheld in the courts, considered Bitcoin a commodity like gold. We are a New York trust company regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services. There would be so much would have to be undone. And you're talking about companies that are providing careers, building the economy. Some of them are going public. They're going to become drivers of the stock market. To unroll that back is so unlikely to me. Of course, it's not 0%, but it might as well be. Remember, regulators are also, they're stakeholders, right? They don't want things happening bad to the companies. They're obviously for consumer protection, but it's important that they embrace this innovation. And a lot of times they go back and forth between public service and private practice. And a lot of them may own Bitcoin at this point, and they're part of it. They believe in it. Certainly the DFS believes in the promise of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and all this stuff. And that, every day that goes by, you're seeing that. You're also seeing people leave a lot of these private companies, crypto companies, go into government. I think it's such a strong amount of people who believe in this in the US that I think it's next to 0% chance that sort of gets rolled back for whatever reason. So I think that the ship has sailed, the case is closed. It's not an open question in the US. I think the same for the UK and Europe. Singapore, we're in a licensing process with the MAS, their top regulator there. They are embracing it. All of the jurisdictions that are free markets, open markets, and believe in capitalism, believe in Bitcoin, believe in crypto, and I think see it as an opportunity more than anything than a threat. And anyone who's done their homework realizes that to stop Bitcoin, you have to snip the internet. You have to become North Korea. So that's not really, and then you lose everything else, right? You lose the Facebooks, the FANG companies that are the biggest drivers of the US economy, and also a lot of these tech companies that drive other economies. So it's completely untenable to shut the internet down to to try and kill Bitcoin. So it's sort of like one of those things you're better off working with it. And then a lot of these folks become employed by crypto companies. A lot of them own crypto and they get a taste of it and they see the promise, they see the opportunity. So we have a lot of champions in government and more by the day, certainly more than we had, many years ago. And the places that have vibrant markets that you actually want to do business are all pro Bitcoin. They all embrace it. Bitcoin in some ways has made the right enemies, whether like regimes and authoritarian regimes or jurisdictions, but we were never counting on that to begin with, right? If you start a startup, do you really care if you can do business in North Korea or certain jurisdictions? So anyway, long-winded way of saying is people should, in my opinion, rest easy at night with this idea that I don't think Bitcoin will ever be outlawed in the US, the UK, Europe, in certain parts of Asia.
Yeah, there's I think at this point, there's just so much financial inertia and incentives to sort of become a Bitcoin capital of the world, the innovation, the job creation, the value creation. And it only takes a few jurisdictions to do that. And I don't think most places want to be left behind. It's like, imagine if you just didn't adopt the automobile and you didn't build roadways for your citizens.
Yeah.
And then, you would miss entire industries. And at the end of the day, I don't think, few people want to miss out on that. It's just too interesting and impactful. So I think there's great legal precedent in the US as well as I think the UK, Europe, and Singapore and parts of Asia.